So if you walk through pretty much any neighborhood in Kyoto or Tokyo in mid-August, you are going to encounter a scene that feels like, I mean, it feels like the absolute pinnacle of ancient serene Buddhist tradition, you know?
Absolutely. It's incredibly atmospheric.
Right, the air is just thick with humidity and the sound of cicadas, and you have this soft glow of paper lanterns everywhere. Families are gathering in their hometowns, and you see the muka ebi.
Right, those small welcoming fires.
Yeah, exactly. Burning gently right at the entrances of homes. And of course, sitting right there on the porch are the shoru-uma.
The famous cucumber horses and eggplant cows.
Yes. Just sitting there, patiently waiting to carry the spirits of the ancestors home for a visit. It all feels so deeply rooted, like a spiritually seamless tradition. But if you actually look at the core texts, like the Pali Canon,
That's where it all falls apart.
right, this beautiful, comforting image contradicts the entire foundational premise of the religion.
It is a massive theological contradiction, yeah. I mean, the idea of your ancestors physically popping into your living room for a few days to enjoy some tea and melon, it completely shatters the original Buddhist framework of reincarnation.
Because if you're reincarnated, you've moved on.
Exactly. If you were to somehow transport the historical Buddha to a modern Japanese Ullambana festival,
Mm.
he wouldn't just be confused, he would vehemently argue against almost everything happening in front of him.
Wait, really? He'd argue against it.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because, yeah, I guess if you are reincarnated, you're not hanging around in some ethereal holding pen waiting for your descendants to, carve a vehicle out of a summer vegetable.
Precisely. What you are witnessing when you see an Obon festival today is it's not a pure, unbroken transmission of ancient dogma. It is basically 1,000-year-old cultural chimera.
A cultural chimera. I love that.
Yeah, it's an architectural structure of belief that has stitched together entirely different theological systems, survival tactics, and localized folk religions across India, China, and Japan.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly what we are dissecting in today's deep dive. We've got this really fascinating stack of historical texts, folklore records, and academic papers in front of us, and the goal for you listening is to map out the exact mechanics of how this tradition evolved.
Right, because it's a wild journey.
It really is. How did a religion that explicitly rejects the idea of lingering spirits create one of the most famous festivals dedicated to welcoming them home? So to understand that, we have to look at the original Indian mechanism that started it all, right?
Yeah, we have to start in India. And if we look at original ancient Indian Buddhism, there is absolutely no festival for returning spirits. None.
Wow, okay.
But what they did have was a practice called Uango. And this was an intensely grueling rainy season retreat for the monastic community.
Because of the monsoons, right?
Exactly. During the monsoon season in India, traveling was essentially impossible. It was incredibly dangerous. So Buddhist monks would isolate themselves in their monasteries. And for months, they would undergo these intense ascetic practices.
Like meditation and fasting.
Deep meditation, severe fasting, strict adherence to the precepts. It was a period of extreme physical and psychological endurance.
So they're essentially like building up a massive reservoir of spiritual capital.
That's a perfect way to put it. And this retreat always concluded on a very specific day called Jishi, which fell on the 15th day of the lunar month.
The 15th. Okay, taking note of that date.
Yes, keep that date in mind. On Jishi, the monks would emerge from this isolation, completely spiritually purified.
And this is where the lay people come in, right? Because according to the text we reviewed, when the monks finished this hardcore ascetic boot camp, the local villagers would offer them food, clothing, and necessities.
Right.
And because the monks had just achieved this heightened state of purity, the act of feeding them wasn't just charity, was it? It generated a tremendous amount of good karma, or merit, for the giver.
Yes, a massive amount of merit. But, and this is the key, the lay people didn't just hoard that karma for themselves.
They didn't.
No, they utilized a theological mechanic known as eiko, which basically translates to merit transfer.
Merit transfer.
Right. The idea was that you could take the immense spiritual capital you generated by feeding a holy monk on Jishi, and you could consciously dedicate it or transfer it to your deceased loved ones to, improve their standing in their next reincarnation.
Wait, so there are no spirits physically coming back to eat the cucumber horses at this point?
Zero. No spirits whatsoever.
So it's almost like I look at this almost like a spiritual wire transfer or an exchange rate mechanism. Like I provide physical sustenance to the monks.
Right.
The monks convert that physical sustenance into spiritual currency through their purity, and then I use the echo mechanic to wire those spiritual funds directly to my ancestors' accounts in the next realm.
What's fascinating here is that that is a highly accurate way to frame it. It was the transaction, it was a clinical, philosophical, and really mechanical approach to the afterlife.
That is so clinical.
Very. There was no emotional reunion. There were no ghosts hanging out in the living room. You performed a highly meritorious act on Jishi, and you forwarded the proceeds. That was the entirety of the original Indian practice.
Okay, but a mechanical wire transfer is, incredibly dry. So what does this all mean for how it got to East Asia? If we trace the movement of Buddhism along the Silk Road, that clinical approach is going to crash headfirst into a massive cultural wall when it reaches China.
Oh, a colossal wall.
Because Chinese society was foundationally built on Confucianism, where family structure and the veneration of ancestors weren't just important, they were the absolute center of the universe.
Yes, the highest virtue in Chinese society was ko, or filial piety. The absolute dedication to your parents and your lineage was basically the glue that held their entire civilization together.
So you have these Indian Buddhist monks arriving in China, and their core message is, hey, shave your head, abandon your family name, leave your parents behind, and go live in a monastery to achieve enlightenment.
Right, which sounds terrible to them.
To a Confucian society, that isn't just weird, that is an existential threat. It's deeply offensively unfilial. That is a massive PR disaster for a new religion trying to gain a foothold.
It was a crisis of survival for Buddhism in China. I mean, they were being actively persecuted for being unfilial. So they needed a way to bridge the gap between their monastic requirements and the strict Chinese demand for ko.
They had to adapt.
They had to. And the academic consensus, looking at the historical sources, points to a brilliant, deliberate, and somewhat controversial solution.
Which is?
The creation of a Gikyo.
A Gikyo. Wait, meaning a counterfeit sutra.
A pseudo-sutra, yes. A scripture that was almost certainly written in China by Chinese monks, but explicitly claimed to be the original translated words of the historical Buddha from India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this specific text was called the Ullambana Sutra.
Ullambana Sutra. And right there in the title, we have the linguistic root of the word Obon. So this counterfeit text was essentially a localized marketing campaign. It was like a theological Trojan horse designed to smuggle Buddhist mechanics into a Confucian value system. How did the story actually work?
Well, the Ullambana Sutra is a masterpiece of emotional manipulation and narrative design. It centers on Mokuren.
Okay, Mokuren.
Right, one of the Buddha's most famous disciples, who was renowned for his extraordinary clairvoyant and magical powers. The story goes that Mokuren uses his powers to check on his recently deceased mother, fully expecting to see her resting peaceful.
Naturally.
But instead, to his absolute horror, he discovers she has fallen into the hell of starvation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She's emaciated, suffering terribly, just reduced to skin and bone.
Which is a brilliant narrative hook. I mean, if you want to capture the attention of a society obsessed with filial piety, you show them the ultimate nightmare, a mother suffering eternally because her son isn't doing enough to help her.
Exactly. And the text makes the suffering so visceral. So Mokuren, completely devastated, rushes down to hell with a bowl of food to feed her. But the moment she opens her mouth to eat, the food instantly bursts into flames.
It bursts into flames. That's terrifying.
Because her karma is so tainted by greed in her past life that she is fundamentally incapable of receiving nourishment.
So Mokuren has all these magical powers, but he is completely impotent to save his own mother.
Right. So he flies back to the Buddha in tears, basically begging for a loophole.
And this is where the authors of the Ullambana Sutra brilliantly deploy that old Indian mechanic, isn't it?
Yes. The Buddha tells Mokuren that his mother's karmic debt is just too massive for one individual to pay off alone. The only way to save her is to hold the Ullambana.
The festival.
The festival. The Buddha instructs him to prepare a massive opulent feast and offer it to the entire monastic community on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month.
Wait, which is Jishi, the exact day the monks finished their Uongo retreat.
You connected the dots.
They took the Indian day and they took the Indian mechanic of a merit transfer and they just wrapped it in this blockbuster emotional narrative about a desperate son saving his mother from hell.
Exactly. The Buddha promises Mokuren that by feeding the pure monks on this specific day, the collective spiritual capital generated will be so massive that it will instantly shatter his mother's torment.
Wow.
And furthermore, the Buddha declares that anyone who performs this act of ko, this ultimate filial piety, will save their ancestors up to 7 generations back.
That completely flips the script. Buddhism goes from being the religion that tells you to abandon your family to being literally the only technology capable of saving your family from eternal torment.
It is a masterful cultural adaptation.
It really is.
And it was wildly successful. I mean, if you look at the historical records, Emperor Wu of Liang, who was a massive patron of Buddhism, officially held the Ullambana Festival in the year 538 AD in his capital of Nanjing.
The emperor himself.
Yeah, the fact that the emperor himself was sponsoring it proves just how thoroughly this Chinese narrative had legitimized Buddhism by using the engine of Indian karma.
Okay, so we have the wire transfer mechanic from India. We have the emotional family-saving narrative from China. But if we stop there, we still don't have the aesthetic of Obon that we see today.
True.
We have a feast for monks, and we have merit being beamed into hell. We still don't have ancestors showing up at the front door. So how does the physical return of the spirits get bolted onto this framework?
Well, for that, we have to follow the Ullambana queue as it crosses the ocean to Japan. And just as China was not a blank slate, Japan had its own deeply entrenched indigenous cosmology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Japan had a bedrock of Shinto and local animistic folk beliefs already in place, right?
Yes. Specifically, a foundational concept known as Sanchu Takaikan,
Sanchu Takaikan.
which translates to the mountain otherworld view. Ancient Japanese agrarian societies did not believe in a distant, abstract heaven or a subterranean hell. They believed that when a member of the village died, their spirits simply ascended to the mountains overlooking the valley.
So they just went up the hill.
Literally.
Yeah.
They became ancestral deities who watched over the crops and the community.
They were local. They were geographically right there.
Yes. And most importantly, the Japanese believed that during specific transitional times of the year, primarily midsummer and midwinter, those spirits would physically travel down from the mountains to visit their living descendants.
Oh. This is the missing puzzle piece. Because when the Buddhist monks arrive in Japan preaching the Urbankyo, telling people they need to honor their ancestors on the 15th of the lunar month, they are talking to villagers who already have a massive midsummer festival dedicated to physically interacting with their dead.
It was a profound synchronization. The native Japanese priests and the villagers, they didn't abandon their practices. They simply absorbed the Buddhist dates and the Buddhist terminology. Obon ceased to be just a distant transfer of merit. It became a tactile, physical family reunion.
Which completely explains the mechanics of the Mukiibi.
Exactly.
If you genuinely believe your grandfather's spirit is navigating his way down a dark wooded mountain to find your specific house, he needs a runway.
He needs light.
Right. You light the Mukiibi fires at the gate to physically guide him in, and then when the festival is over, you light the Okuibi to safely guide him back to the mountain.
And this physical animism applies directly to the Shoryo Uma, the cucumber horses, and eggplant cows.
I love those little guys.
They're iconic.
Wow.
But these are not just cute symbolic crafts. In the context of Sanchu Takaikan, they are literal vehicles.
Literal vehicles.
Yes. If a spirit is making a physical journey from the mountain, they need transportation. A fast horse made of a fresh summer cucumber to get them home as quickly as possible, and a slow, sturdy cow made of an eggplant to linger on the journey back, burdened with all the physical offerings the family is sending with them.
The extent of this physical preparation is incredible, especially when you look at the folklore records regarding Tanabata.
Oh, Tanabata's role is fascinating.
Because today, we know Tanabata on July 7th as the Star Festival people write wishes on colorful paper and hang them on bamboo. But the research from folklore scholars like Yanagita and Orikuchi highlights that Tanabata originally served a much more pragmatic ritualistic purpose for Obon.
Yes, their research is crucial here. In the old calendar, July marked the beginning of the second half of the year. Obon wasn't just a holiday, it was a cosmic reset on par with New Year's. And if you are about to invite sacred ancestral deities into your living space, that space absolutely cannot be polluted.
You have to clean house, literally and spiritually.
Exactly. Tanabata was originally a period of extensive water-related purification rituals. It was about cleansing the physical world of malevolent spirits and defilement before the revered ancestors arrived on the 15th.
Wow.
And the villagers would use dolls and significantly woven horses in these water purifications to absorb the impurities and wash them away.
Wait, woven horses. That directly foreshadows the Shoryo Uma that appear a week later.
It does. Tanabata was effectively the preamble to Obon.
And speaking of water and the physical movement of spirits, the source material on Nagasaki's tradition provides one of the most intense examples of how deeply the Japanese internalize this physical presence.
You're talking about Shotogashi.
Yes. If you've ever seen footage of Shonagashi, it is a total sensory overload. It completely shatters the image of Obon as a quiet, serene event.
Nagasaki's history as a port city with heavy Chinese influence created a very unique iteration of the festival. Families who have lost someone in the past year build these massive, incredibly elaborate wooden ships, spirit boats.
Right, and they can be several meters long, adorned with lanterns and family crests.
And they parade these ships through the center of the city down to the harbor to launch them into the water, sending the spirits off to the west, toward the Buddhist Pure Land.
But the parade itself is deafening. The families are pushing these massive boats, and they are surrounded by people throwing hundreds of boxes of firecrackers onto the pavement. The explosions are nonstop. The smoke completely fills the streets.
The firecrackers, which are derived from Chinese custom, are meant to violently scare away any evil spirits that might try to interfere with the ancestors' journey.
Yeah.
But what is truly fascinating about Shonagashi is the psychological weight of the ritual. The source material refers to it as essentially a second funeral.
Right, because for 2 days, under the belief of Sanchu Takaikan, that family genuinely felt the presence of their recently deceased loved one in the house.
Yes.
They offered them food, they spoke to them, they recreated the family unit, and then they have to physically load that spirit onto a boat and push them away.
The contrast is staggering. You have the loud, chaotic, aggressive energy of the parade through the city, designed to protect the spirit. But once they reach the water and the boat is launched, the text describes the atmosphere shifting into profound sorrow.
Wow.
The gongs are struck quietly. The family stands on the shore and watches the boat drift into the dark. It forces them to process the finality of the loss a second time. It is a deeply visceral manifestation of grief and release, made possible entirely because the cultural framework insists the spirit was actually there.
It elevates Obon from a simple memorial service into this active psychological processing of grief. But there is one more element of this physical interaction that we have to discuss, and it's the dancing.
Bonadori.
Bonadori. If you go to a Bonadori festival today, it is incredibly sanitized. It's a family-friendly community event. You have children in colorful summer yukata eating shaved ice, performing these very orderly, synchronized dances in a circle around a central tower.
Very wholesome.
Right. But the academic sources from the Meiji era paint a drastically different picture.
They really do. In fact, the Meiji government actively tried to eradicate Bonadori.
They tried to ban it.
Completely. If we examine the Ishikikai ordinances, which were strict local laws implemented during the Meiji period to control public behavior in places like Iwate and Gifu prefectures, we find explicit bans on the practice of Bonodori.
And the police records detailing why they banned it are wild. The government outlawed it because it was essentially a massive village-wide rave.
You have to understand the geopolitical context here. The Meiji government in the late 19th century was desperately trying to rapidly modernize and industrialize Japan so they could stand on equal footing with Western powers. They needed a disciplined, orderly, and highly productive society.
And an ecstatic all-night dance party communing with the dead doesn't exactly scream disciplined industrial workforce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, Bonodori was a pressure valve for agrarian societies. Under the cover of darkness and fueled by the religious fervor that the spirits of the dead were physically dancing alongside them, strict societal rules just dissolved. The documents note instances of cross-dressing, people dancing half-naked, loud, chaotic instrumentation, and most concerning to the government, a temporary breakdown of class and gender barriers that led to significant sexual liberation.
It was a sanctioned period of primal communal chaos. And the newly minted Western-facing government viewed it as backward, unseemly, and a direct threat to public morality.
So they crushed it. The police suppressed the festivals. The highly coordinated PG-13 circle dances we see today are largely an invention of the Taisho era.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Local preservation societies realized that if they wanted to save the tradition from being entirely wiped out, they had to sanitize it. They selected appropriate, clean lyrics, standardized the choreography, and repackaged it as wholesome community entertainment.
So they saved the festival, but lost the rave.
Exactly. As the folklore research points out, they successfully saved the form of Bonodori, but the primal liberty and the raw, chaotic communion with the dead was permanently severed.
It is so fascinating how a tradition can be so thoroughly hollowed out and refilled to suit the political needs of the era, yet still maintain its aesthetic shell.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the defining characteristic of Obon. It is a thousand-year miracle blend, constantly absorbing the needs of the people practicing it. Its foundation is the ancient Indian logic of karma and the mechanical transfer of merit through Eiko and Huango.
Right.
The walls of the structure are built from the Chinese narrative of filial piety, the dramatic, emotional leverage of Mokuren saving his mother through Ko.
Yeah, that emotional hook.
And the roof, the aesthetic that gives the festival its recognizable shape, is the indigenous Japanese animism of Sanchu Takaikan, the physical, tactile return of the spirits in the mountains.
So every paper lantern you see, every cucumber horse placed on a porch, and every synchronized dance step is a testament to humanity's refusal to let a tradition stay static. We constantly adapt, forge, and synthesize our beliefs until they provide the exact psychological comfort we need in that specific moment in history.
It is one of the most successful religious evolutions in human history.
And that leaves me with a final thought for you to consider. If Obon is this living, breathing chimera that has survived for a millennium by relentlessly absorbing whatever local culture, politics, and technology it encountered, what is the digital age going to add to the blend?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right, we've gone from Indian monsoon retreats to counterfeit Chinese scrolls to Japanese agricultural mountain spirits. Are we done evolving? Or 50 years from now, will the next generation be utilizing augmented reality glasses to literally see their ancestors' avatars sitting in the living room? Will we be minting digital Shoryu Uma on the blockchain and sending merit transfers through the cloud? Because if 1,000 years of theological adaptation tells us anything, it's that Obon is never finished changing.
That is something to really think about.
Finally, we have a brief apology and a request. Here at AI Buddhism University, we try our best to minimize the mispronunciation of complex Buddhist terminology, but due to the limitations of AI technology, some occasional errors might slip through. Please forgive us. If you have any advice on how to improve the AI's pronunciation, we would love to borrow your wisdom, so please let us know in the comments. We will continue to cover fascinating topics like biographies of great monks, sutra explanations, and the hidden history of Buddhism, so we are also waiting for your topic requests in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. We'll see you in the next explanation. Thank you for listening.